takes you to another topic that you discussed as well. It is this whole issue of God is more interested in who we are
Yes.
than what we do. And
Absolutely.
that being
Yes.
is founded on relationship with
Absolutely.
God first, intimacy with Him.
Absolutely.
If you don't have that intimacy, then what you seek to do in the Lord will not be authentic.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it will be weakened by that. So there's that connection that seems to be in your own thinking between
yes.
those two elements of
Absolutely.
intimacy and putting God first, founding
Yes.
ourselves on Him, and then
Yes, the being versus the doing, because whenever we're trying to just, somebody said it, and I don't know who this quote came from, but it's so powerful. I quoted in the book. We were created to be human beings, not human doings. And when we put the doing before, we fall into a lot of work, all kinds of isms, because, or sometimes we look to find that fulfillment in other people. And so we end up in codependent relationships. We drain each other dry because we're looking to that person to fulfill your greatest need. And God is saying, come to me first. And out of that, because those are the things, a lot of the things that we have are legitimate things. Relationships, our jobs, even the material things. God wants us to have those things. But when we put our hope in those things, I think we really fail to understand who we are created to be.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be a prevalent topic in your book.
Yes, yes, it is.
As I read through it, the ever-present work of God in our lives,
Yes.
and God as a presence that
Yes.
is intervening in every aspect of our
Yes.
lives, every circumstances
Yes.
of failure and struggle,
Yes.
illness and loss,
Yes.
Yes.
Perplexity
at what is next in our lives,
Yes.
or roads that we took that we thought would lead
Yes.
us to something and they end up being dead ends.
Absolutely.
But somehow God
Yes.
being present in every aspect of that journey, and our
Yes.
need to be aware of that and to be
Exactly.
reading His heart and reading His intentions
Yes,
in
exactly.
order to get to where He wants us to get. That seems to be all
Yes.
over your book.
Oh,
You know,
you're
that
so
I'm impacted by
you're so perceptive, Pastor Miranda, because that is the general theme throughout. It's not a desire to try to explain the age-old mystery of why does God allow suffering. We will never be able to fully get that. Why does God allow certain things to happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? People who serve the Lord faithfully, bad things happen to them, and all of that stuff. We can't explain that, but we can say that He causes those things somehow to work together for good to those who love Him. And as you said, at the end of the day, it's really just saying, Lord, here I am. At your mercy, and so I'm not trying to explain the difficulty because I've been through quite a bit myself, and there were times when I said to God, Lord, I don't understand.
Yeah. Was that a change for you arriving at that awareness forced upon you by the journey that you had taken and what you had experienced of God?
Yes.
Did you expect in the beginning that it would be easier, and then you had to change your perspective?
Absolutely. I'm probably speaking for a lot of people. My great heritage, Pentecostal heritage. It's a beautiful heritage, but I think some of our teachings was, if you are good, and I think a lot of Christian denominations, you teach if you're good and you go by the rules, then
it'll work out.
Then it'll work out really well. Yeah. You will never experience tragedy and loss and failure. It will just really work out well. And that was not the case. The first tragedy was my brother, and I begin the story, Rodney, yes. Dying, and my having a conversation with God as he lay in that coma. You can't take him. Yeah. And of course, we were taught not to question God. But I found the God that I've found has been a God who has invited the questions. And
doesn't get offended when you question him,
because
struggle.
After all, he knows that it's there anyway.
Yeah.
I'm struggling, and he was inviting it. As a matter of fact, he had rehearsed the answer with me, as I explained in the book. Days before the tragedy, he had rehearsed the answer. When I was, I talked about this great missionary coming to our chapel service at my Christian college and talking about all these life-changing experiences, life-threatening experiences in her life.
And you're doubting whether you would have the faith
and exactly,
if you found yourself in similar circumstances.
Exactly, going up to the altar and crying out, "Oh God, could I be like this lady? And I mean, what she's been through, and and would I probably would backslide. I probably would not become be a Christian anymore if I went through half of what she did." And God says, "Yes, you would, because it would not be your strength, but my strength in you." And days later, as I would to stand and see my brother, 22-year-old brother, in a coma, and having this conversation with God, "You can take him." And God asking me the question, "But what if I do? Will you still serve me?" "No, you can't take him. He has too much to live for." And at the third time, my saying back what he had said to me, "Yes, I would, because it would not be my strength, but your strength in me." That didn't answer all the questions, but it brought me to a place of understanding that prayer is not just asking God for what we want, but it's surrendering to his greater purpose.
And isn't it interesting that many times the most painful experiences are the ones that really are the most formative for our ministry, and that somehow empowers us to be much more fruitful and useful to him and to the kingdom.
I think even within recent times, I have had to have the question, "Oh, so I can't have this without this, right? I can't have this impactful ministry without this measure of pain in my life, can I?" They come together. I would like to say that, and I'm not saying that there are not good times, and I'm not even saying that the pain is always God orchestrated. Sometimes it's our own wrongdoing, our own mistakes, our own pride, and all of that things. But the God that we serve is a God who is faithful, loving, merciful, that he even uses the mistakes and works it out for good. I find that I am more anointed, more impactful when there is pain in my life on some level. Learning how to overcome, obviously we don't live defined by our pain, then that becomes an idol as well, and we know that. Being able to authentically tell our story without becoming so self-indulged, because we hear stories of people who they almost worship. I was this and I was that, or this is what I'm going through, and after a while it becomes a little bit.
You talk about living life forward,
right?
Which is in the context of that, not becoming obsessed by the failures of the past, but really, looking forward to that God who has good plans for you. Jeremiah 29:11.
Yes, for the plans He has for us, and Paul. When he talks about forgetting the things behind us and moving forward to the things ahead, it's not. I suspect that Paul was talking about some good things, and I suspect he was talking maybe about condoning the stoning death of Stephen. Maybe he had that in his conscience, the persecution he exacted upon the people of God before he gave his life to Christ. I suspect all of those things were in his heart, but he had to move forward, and he couldn't stay behind. He was a great man, scholar, very learned man. And yet he had to kind of call those things as rubbish, as trash, for the greater knowledge of knowing Jesus.
Which is one of the things that you talk a lot about, this fact that in all of our lives, no matter how faithful we are to the Lord, there are those dark moments of failing God, or failing loved ones, or failing in ministry or in personal life. And realizing that somehow God was not absent in those moments, so somehow these things took him by surprise, and kind of had to recover and refine his love for us. I mean, they were part of his entire tapestry for our lives. He works through all of those dark moments to bring about what he wants us to.